Good evening. For you? Institute for Women's Leadership here at Rutgers University. As befitting tonight's talk and tonight's speaker, we are asking you to join the conversation on Twitter. Hashtag IWL Steinem. On behalf of President Barchi, Dr. Francis Barchi, my colleagues in the IWL Consortium, and the School of Communications and Information, who have together with us developed a special initiative on women, media, and technology, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to this annual Susan and Michael Angelides Endowed Lecture. Let me take a moment to acknowledge Susan and Michael, who are here with us this evening. Michael, Susan, please stand. Many thanks to both of you for your generous support, which enables us to bring distinguished women leaders to Rutgers. Now, I also have the pleasure and the honor of introducing tonight's Angelides lecturer, Gloria Steinem. Who, as the cliche goes, really needs no introduction. To many of us who grew up in the 1970s and 1980s at the height of the women's movement, Gloria embodied then and still embodies all the best values and attributes of feminism, its commitment to the dignity of all humans, and its commitment to peace and economic justice. She has fought with words and deeds for the life-changing view of a world as if women and girls mattered. When President Obama recently awarded Steinem the Medal of Freedom, the country's highest honor to a civilian, he called Gloria a feminist icon. He got it right. As a writer, as a speaker, as an editor, as a feminist activist and media spokesperson, Gloria Steinem is without peer. She founded Ms., has authored 4 best-selling books, which are listed in your programs, and was one of the original founders and columnists for New York Magazine. She is widely quoted. There is even a Steinem fridge magnet, which I recommend to you, which says, quote, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." Right? This leads me to 3 central facts about Gloria Steinem. The first is her sense of humor, which is legendary. 2 of her best-known essays are entitled, "I Was a Playboy Bunny," and, quote, "If Men Could Menstruate." Whoever said that feminists had no sense of humor hasn't read or listened to Gloria Steinem. Second, her generosity and inclusiveness. She always prefers to give credit to others. Often, she insists on sharing podiums with distinguished women of color who all too frequently were marginalized by others in the mainstream women's movement. And her support for gay rights has been unwavering for decades. Lastly, I'd point out her capacity for self-invention. Gloria Steinem's biographer, the literary scholar Carolyn Heilbrunner, put it this way: if we ask what it is as a woman to be truly educated, the answer for Steinem, and perhaps all women, seems to lie in the ability to cultivate one's skeptical self and to trust what one discovers when one questions patriarchal dogma, to trust one's own and other women's experiences over social myths, close quote. It's this last attribute, Steinem's capacity for skepticism, which leads to self-invention, that has given rise to the provocative title of her talk tonight, Media, More Real Than Reality. I, for one, cannot wait to hear what she has to say to educate us all. So join me in welcoming Gloria Steinem to Rutgers.
Well, Allison, I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say either. I mean, for me to follow your version of me is serious. First, I want to thank each of you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here tonight. Because of your generosity, we're here in a combination of people that has never happened before and could never happen again in quite the same way. And since each of us is a combination of millennia upon millennia of heredity and environment, I never understood why the nature versus nurture argument, did you? I mean, obviously it's both, combined in a way that could never have happened before and will never happen again. And we are here with all 5 senses, so we can see, listen, talk, intuit, and empathize with each other, something even the most miraculous new media technology can't duplicate. Just to be sure, I called my friend, the neurologist and author, Dr. Gayatri Devi, and she said, yeah, it's true. Hormones and neurotransmitters are way more likely to be released if we are in a space together. Since those include, say, serotonin, which regulates all bodily functions, plus mood, and also the now famous oxytocin, known as the tend and befriend hormone because it allows us to empathize with each other and to bond. This sounds pretty exciting. And we're here. So I especially want to thank Susan and Michael Angelides for giving us the gift of time in a room together. And President Bob Barchi and Dr. Francis Barchi for the time we had dinner together just before this. And Allison, who brings academics and activists together in such creative ways and is such a positive person. I always know that nothing bad could happen to me while, while Allison is in the room. And I thank the visionaries of the Institute for Women's Leadership Consortium and the School of Communications, because together they are bringing a revolutionary message to the revolutionary media. Maybe brain chemistry can also explain why it is that I so look forward to the question and answer period. So yes, I'm going to talk for a while, but it's really to give us something shared to respond to. I'm counting on you, every one of you, to reverse this hierarchical way we're sitting. Because of our numbers, we have to, with each of you looking at each other's backs and me looking at you. And instead, pretend we're sitting in a circle. Give us answers, not just questions. Say what you know and I don't know. Make announcements of upcoming troublemaking meetings you think this group should know about. Turn this into an organizing meeting. Remember, hierarchy came with patriarchy, and neither one works anymore. Okay. Besides, I have to say that life to me is just one big editorial meeting. Tonight, we're focused on the media, especially new and technological media, how they will, could, or should change our lives and our now and future world. Nothing but nothing could be more important. For the first time, media has given us the power to compose our own message. It could connect us and let us see each other as what we really are, passengers on this fragile spaceship Earth. In Alice Walker's lovely phrase, her blue body, everything we know. On the other hand, it could reinforce division of race, gender, economics, literacy, access to water and clean air, religion, yes, religion. I know I'm not supposed to talk about religion, but I should stipulate that I don't mean spirituality, which to me is finding God in all living things. But I do mean those religions in which God looks suspiciously like the ruling class. They become politics in the sky. Politics we're not supposed to talk about, which is exactly why we must talk about it. Think about it. The most dangerous prospect is a doomsday weapon coinciding with religions that promise heaven after doomsday. Our hope lies in wanting to live with all five senses as we are right now in this room. It's true that we could read an article or a blog or a tweet about being here, but it wouldn't be the same. We would be using our frontal lobe to imagine across distance, but we wouldn't be using, say, our reptilian brain that can smell smoke in the middle of our sleep and escape a fire. So here's the bottom line. If we're to use new technology and not let the new technology use us, we have to be clear. Media are not reality. Reality is reality. Once upon a time, we wouldn't have had to make this distinction. Humans have been around for at least 100,000 years, I guess more. I mean, every time there's a new archaeological find, it turns out we've been here longer. And for 95% of it, we've been sitting around campfires, telling stories as a way of sharing knowledge about everything from farming, hunting, and pharmacology to the full range of human emotions. There was no separation between medium and message. On the ground where we now sit, for instance, that was probably the way of communal learning and decision-making. And that was only 600 or so years ago. It was a profoundly democratic way in which women and men were equal. Many languages, many original languages, like Cherokee, didn't even have gendered pronouns of he and she. Human beings were human beings. Imagine that. How did we get so crazy as to give gender to tables and chairs? No wonder they call them Romance languages. It was this kind of community that astounded patriarchal Europeans when they showed up on this subcontinent, then called Turtle Island. And they brought books and Bibles and isolated ways of learning. It was also the beginning of the end of the Iroquois Confederacy of 6 nations, the oldest living participatory democracy on Earth. I don't know why we think democracy came from the Greeks, who had slavery and no women. No, it came from the original cultures right here. Our Constitution is based on the structure of the Iroquois Confederacy, which law schools are finally beginning to admit. But when they wrote our Constitution, they obviously created slavery, allowed slavery, and left out females. As women in Indian country now say, because they have to have a sense of humor to survive, what did Columbus call primitive? Equal women. It is actually what people call primitive. Okay. Everywhere. Yet the remaining power and equality in Native women in upstate New York was the inspiration for the suffrage movement. A whole other story we need desperately to learn. One more reason for that button on my refrigerator, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Now, our own media are the current campfire, yet not everyone is allowed to be present around the campfire or to tell their own story or to hear the stories of others. Everything may be in our campfire. Everything may be interrupted by commercials that cost far more than the gathering of the news that the commercials interrupt. We're likely to hear more about faraway events than the reality we live with, and more about violence than about the absence of violence. As in the newsroom saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Even our view of how humans look and behave, and therefore how you and I and everyone should look and behave, is scripted and computer-generated and focus grouped and tied to products. Yet because we are communal creatures, the media campfire is still where we learn what is normal, what is possible, what is desirable. Even if we're informed enough to know that the media are not reality, reality is reality, they still are the biggest force shaping what reality will become. For instance, you may wonder why it's taken women in this country 40 years to go from 59 cents on the dollar earned by men to 77 cents, or why we have the highest rate of unplanned births in the developed world, or why we also have the highest rate of domestic violence. Indeed, if you added up all the Americans killed in 9/11, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and then added up all the women murdered by their husbands and boyfriends since 9/11, the second body count far exceeds the first. Many more women have been murdered by their husbands and boyfriends than all of those before in those categories. Go to the website of the Women's Media Center and you will find a just released report on the status of women in the US media. And it's on all platforms, from print to computer games. About a third of staffs in newsrooms are women, a figure that has not increased since 1999. Clout positions in mainstream media, telecommunications, electronic media, and publishing, that is, the positions, clout positions means the place, those that decide what gets covered and what does not, are occupied only by 3% women. In major movies, women are 28% of characters who actually say anything and are also much, much younger and more likely to be partially nude and sexualized. Among women, Latinas were the most likely to play overly sexualized, to be asked to play and forced to play overly sexualized roles. Meanwhile, of 568 directors of major movies, 568, only 33 were African American, and only 2 of those 33 were African American women. Though women have made great advances in sports as players, and here's something I really don't understand, we are 45% of National Football League fans. What is the reason for that? Marriage? Anyway, of 150 print publications and websites covering sports, 90% of the editors are white males. Now, we know this is not about biology, and we know there are many white males who are more feminist than some women, and we understand that, but it is absolutely crucial that we be able to see it in order to be it, and that we include the experience that comes from walking around in a female body, a person of color, a gay person, a lesbian person, a transsexual person. We need to know that. Women are 47% of gamers, yet only 12% of game developers. In Silicon Valley, women as a group earn roughly half of what men as a group earn. And according to a report in the Pacific Standard, The democracy of the internet is also limited by more and more and more woman hatred. For instance, a male username gets an average of 3.7 physical threats a day. Female usernames get an average of 100 threats a day. Perhaps partly because the web is virtual, with no physical presence, no oxytocin to generate bonding, the internet is becoming increasingly a place of cyberbullying, the posting of humiliating photographs, pornography that in no way resembles erotica, child pornography, and a channel for the sale of human beings for sex and labor, a global industry that now rivals drugs and arms for profits. When I'm on campuses, as I am several times a month, students tell me that pornography is replacing the sex education that the right wing eliminated in high schools, and computer screens full of sexualized violence and sadism are now a normal, unavoidable part of dormitory life. It's not cool to object. Yet this happens precisely because we don't object. And many social media entrepreneurs behave as if technology were the only point. They put far less effort into being responsible for the message. For instance, sites giving medical information about breastfeeding were taken down, while pornography sites were left up. And then there come the realities of who has access to the World Wide Web. In one of the buildings of the beautiful campus of Google in Northern California, I saw a map of the world on the wall, with every search represented in real time by a colored thread shooting up. You can see that Africa has the fewest such colored strings. And even in this country, you can see that richer areas have more than poorer areas. In fact, the digital divide is a pretty good proxy for power. More than 80% of internet users are in industrialized countries. The fewest are in Africa. Though in this country, men and women are only about 2% apart in computer use, 67% of white non-Hispanic households use the internet, while only 47% of Black households have access. If I were a billionaire of high tech, I would pay the school fees of every child in Africa, because literacy would seem to me to be an investment, the best investment in my business. And I would at least put computers in every library and school, free, since the sales depend on user numbers. In short, we have to remember that revolutions don't happen by pressing send. And iPhones and computers may bring a kind of anti-Buddhist era in which we're never fully present where we really are. There are other ways in which media is gendered, and there are many ways we haven't even figured out yet. So it's fun to try to see what the cause is, and thus we can change it. For instance, the news is routinely gendered into hard and soft. The first consists of facts, statistics, and generalities, and the second are stories that are human interest, or soft news. Because what we have left of serious journalists tend to go for hard facts, and yet the human brain is organized around narrative and image. That is what, if you tell me a fact or a statistic, I will invent a narrative as to why it is true, right? Think of all those millennia around campfires. It is narrative that organizes our brains. We are starved for narrative as a result. So we turn to celebrities because they are the only narrative in town. Also, we routinely say, as if it were the highest standard. There are two sides to every question. That is because we are accustomed to dividing human nature into masculine and feminine. In fact, there may be 7 or 13 or 5. And even just to say there was an uneven number and therefore reduce the probability of combat on television is a great, great relief, like water in the desert. Or take the profound racism that is still here, though ebbing generationally, just as anti-gay and anti-lesbian and bias is ebbing. Yet public opinion questions seem to indicate that about 1/3 of white Americans base actions on attitudes on race, and many of them are very, very powerful Americans. I sometimes think that if the Tea Party and its backers, the Koch brothers, had cancer, and President Obama had the cure for cancer, they wouldn't accept it. But this country, in about 20 minutes, maybe not 20 minutes, but a few years, is about to become a majority non-white nation for the first time. Well, at least since we killed 90% of its first inhabitants. Right? This change of majority seems to me great. I mean, we may relate to the rest of the world better and stop basing everything on tiny, infinitesimal, hung-up, patriarchal, monotheistic Europe. But it doesn't seem so great to those accustomed to privilege by race. They are in full revolt against everything having to do with reproductive freedom, from birth control to abortion, because white women tend to have fewer children than women of color. And they will cheerfully say to me from lecture audiences different from this one, the white race is committing suicide. And they are also against immigration, documented and otherwise, because it also changes the racial balance. And they distort who undocumented immigrants really are. It would be in any case a woman's issue, but actually the average undocumented immigrant is not a drug dealer, but a woman or a child. 65% of undocumented immigrants are women and children. At the same time, we've learned from domestic violence, from deeply understanding domestic violence, that the family is the first and deepest place that violence gets normalized. And there it is not about monetary or any rational gain, it's about maintaining masculine control on the part of a man who did not invent this system, was born in this system, and got hooked on the idea of supremacy and control. Thus, the most dangerous time for a woman is when she is about to escape or has just escaped. We know that. That is the time she is most likely to be murdered, because she has escaped control and she is about to be free. Well, I think we can learn from that, because I think this country is about to be free. We've turned against 2 wars in half the time it took to oppose the war in Vietnam. We're changing about our majority attitudes about everything from marriage equality to the minimum wage. Now the majority of Americans support increasing the minimum wage. And we elected a proud African-American family to the White House twice. And we might elect a woman. We're becoming a very different America. So I think 2 things are true. First, this is a time of maximum danger because we are about to be free, and we must be aware and look after each other and understand the ferocity of the resistance. And second, we also understand there is no turning back. Just as we wouldn't tell anyone to stay in a violent household, we won't turn away from freedom. So now, as never before, we need to talk to each other in every way, from new media technology to the old communal ways with all 5 senses as we sit in this room. And I can't think of any place better than a great public university like this, inclusive and idealistic, where these worlds come together to lead the way. And perhaps at last we are on the verge of a time in which we will at last see each other and ourselves and this country and the world as linked, not ranked. Thank you. Now, the reason I know that we're going to have an organizing meeting is because we have the great Charlotte Bunch here. Who's going to lead it?
Thank you. Well, let's just all thank you one more time, Gloria, for a fabulous presentation. Well, now I've just organized the room to stand on its feet in one phrase, so I think we can get some more activity going. I want to invite those who have questions to come to these 2 mics, and there'll be a line at each. Meanwhile, while you're coming up to the mics, in addition to our thank you to Gloria for this really very comprehensive overview, I would like to ask her to say a word or two, since this is the Institute for Women's Leadership meeting, about a quote from her speech at the time she got the medal from the president, when she said, "I'm not passing the torch, I'm using it to light others." And I think this is a wonderful image for women's leadership. So I'd just like you to say a word or two about what you meant then and how you saw that. And
Well,
come forward if you have questions.
it's a question. I'm sure Charlotte gets this question. I'm sure Allison does. You know, people ask us golden oldies, you know, who are you passing the torch to, right? And so I finally decided to just say, okay, I'm not passing it. I'm keeping it. Thank you very much. And I am using it to light other people's torches. Because the whole idea that there's only one torch is part of the hierarchical bullshit, right? And only if we each have a torch will we be able to see where we're going. And I would just amend by saying, come if you have answers, not just questions. We could all use some answers.
And as she said before, when you come up, and I'm really amazed, where are all these wonderful students of mine? You're supposed to be here at this mic. We would like to invite you to come and not only ask questions, but just if there's something you'd really like to have us think about for the future. But at the same time, we want to hear as many as possible in a short time. So please try to limit yourself to 1 or 2 minutes, okay? We'll start right here. Thank you. And please just say your name too. So
Hello, is this on? Okay. It was an honor to hear you speak. Right into the mic. Oh, there we go. It was a real honor to hear you speak. My name is Andrea Mouret. I was a journalism student here at Rutgers, and I actually just came back from living in Latin America. I was there since last year, and I definitely did live through a patriarchal system there where I wasn't even allowed to leave my room for certain reasons. The director of our group said that I couldn't leave, and for various reasons, and that was really frustrating for me. But I'm also a Christian, and I take a lot of rest in the fact that my faith also sets women free. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is John 8:32, which says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," which is quoting Jesus. And when I see, the hierarchy of Jesus, who was a monotheistic, he claimed to be God. He was a monotheistic leader. I found it curious when you said that hierarchy and patriarchy and monotheism kind of went hand in hand in the suppression of women. And when I look at the example that Jesus laid out in the Bible, he was radical in how he broke down certain systems. Like, he spoke to prostitutes, he spoke to women that were rejected, and he brought them into his group and said, "This woman, she is wonderful, she is accepted. I think she is full of so much potential." And so I just wondered how you would respond to that. Do you see that as patriarchal in the way that I think he empowered women, and he brought them into the center of attention and said she should be listened to, she should be honored. He publicly spoke well of his mother. And so I was just curious what your thoughts were in regards to how Jesus treated women.
Okay.
I think Jesus would or would not be a Christian now, depending on what the representation was. When I read about Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels, which I commend to you, if you haven't read it, he is a very different person from the way he is presented in many Christian doctrines and in many Christian practices, right? So, we're all human. Just because he is a male doesn't mean that I can't identify with him, and you do. And just because I'm a female doesn't mean that men can't identify with me. So I would say whatever message you find that empowers you, and if that empowers you, good, absolutely. But I do hope that you as a Christian will consider some of the things that are being done. For instance, in Arizona, as we just saw, in the name of Christianity, the law was supposed to allow anyone to fail to serve gay or lesbian or transgender citizens. And that was just struck down, and that was done in the name of Christianity. So I think you can be much more effective than me because, you're there, you're part of this group, in making it much more what Jesus had in mind.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay. This is crazy. I'm so excited. You said we could use this as like a platform for organizing shoutouts. I would like to invite you to come to my favorite thing if you ever want to come. It's every Tuesday. Anytime, open pass. So on Tuesday nights, we run a group called WOA. It's Women Organizing Against Harassment. And we're the group, yeah. Right? It's good. It's a good thing. You all should come. Please come. It's a group to eradicate gender violence and sexual assault on college campuses. We just saw in Miss Magazine the huge feature article about this, and it's a really current problem. We're trying to do a lot of work towards it. And the question I would have for you is, I try to talk to a lot of people in journalism, the media, come cover our events. We have a huge march this April 23rd, for example, that we all can come to. just plug it in. But so we have these big things that we want to get covered, and people say, people don't care about that because it's a women's issue, or it's just an issue about domestic violence. It's just an issue for the small population. So I feel like this is an issue for everyone, but what would you say when people say it's just an issue for a small segment?
Well, first of all, I can see you're a really good organizer. And you make an announcement, you have a caucus. you know, how great is that? That's great. And here's, I happen to have the perfect book for you, okay? It's called Sex and World Peace by Valerie Hudson, published by Columbia University Press. And there are 4 other scholars, I believe, writing it, but it's also readable in addition to being very, very well researched. And what it demonstrates in the world, in 100 current countries, is that the single greatest indicator of whether a country will be violent within itself, in its own streets, or whether it will use military violence against another country, is not poverty, is not access to natural resources, is not degree of democracy or religion. It is violence against females. That is what, in terms of numbers and intimacy in the home and being part of the culture, convincing, you know, that you have to have somebody dominant and somebody passive and somebody conquering and somebody and so on. That is what sets that pattern and normalizes that pattern. So by that standard, there is nothing on earth more important than what you are doing.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Barbara Nemad, and I'm really, really nervous and thrilled to be here. Me too. I mean, I'm so shaking. I'm like, this is better than sex. And I don't say that about much. So I have a question, and I also have an idea, because you said you want us to bring ideas. So one thing I found helpful before I got my tubes tied, when I was in my 30s and had had a couple of abortions and was kind of sick of all the trauma and the pain and the expense of that, is that when I was going to sleep with a man, and he would say, well, don't worry. If you get pregnant, I'll pay for the abortion, or I'll support the child, and don't worry. And I said, well, you know what? If we're going to sleep together, it's $400 for an abortion. Give me the money up front. If I don't get pregnant, you get the money back. If I do get pregnant, you're going to owe me a lot more than that. And he said, well, how do I know? Well, how do I know you're going to give it back? And I say, trust me. Don't you trust me? You want me to trust you? And that worked. I mean, I got men to do that. And we can do this. We can do this. We have to demand this. And if they want it, you know, they're going to pay. And maybe they'll get their money back, maybe they won't. You know. So that was my organizing idea. And then my question is, even when I say things that are not nearly as, quote, extreme as that, just, you know, don't call me honey, don't use the term girl for woman, things like that, I am shunned. I mean, even, you know, when I seek out women's organizations, you know, now or whatever, people are always, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too this, he didn't mean anything by it. Oh, you know, he touched you, he doesn't even know you, but he put his arm around you, you know, or you're in a bar and people are, and I basically have no friends. And I have to speak up. It's, you know, I can't not speak up, but then I'm so isolated, and I just don't know if you have any suggestions or how you deal. I mean, how do I live like a quality life and be a feminist?
I think you just made a lot of friends. And I love your reversal of trust me, you know. You know, in Hollywood they say, how do you say fuck you? Trust me. You know, I think that there are so many people who feel as you do, that maybe you haven't found the right place to say or people to say what you need to say to. And you know, I just think you have so much companionship that you deserve that kind of support. And in any case, don't give up on that inner voice, that true voice that probably has been there. It's in us from childhood, I think, you know? I mean, you know how little kids say, it's not fair? You are not the boss of me, you know? Okay, I think that's the whole ballgame. If we can just hang on to that, those are the great social justice movements right there, right? So I would just urge anyone in the audience who wants to support somebody who has not found support enough, come and say hello afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. And don't forget those Tuesday night meetings that she just announced, right? So I just want to say,
What they are, the Tuesday night?
oh, the,
Women Against is Women Organizing Against Harassment. We meet at 9 p.m. in the Women's Center, which is on the 3rd floor of the DCC.
the Douglas College, Douglas campus. Okay,
All right, I
Right.
think we've just
thank you.
right, put
Great.
things together. Okay.
Yes, next question.
Hello, it's such an honor to be here. First off, I want to give a shout out to Douglas Residential College. But secondly, on par with everything that Douglas stands for, one of the things that frustrates me most is how the public school system keeps talking about feminism and the feminist movement as part of the past and is not talking about what it is currently and what we need now. And this rhetoric of it's getting better or it's so much better now, it needs to stop. And I was wondering how you think we can do that.
No, thank you for saying that, right, because, I mean, I'm here to tell you that the same people who used to say to me, you can't do that, it's against nature, God, Freud, somebody, are now the very same people are saying to me, well, it used to be necessary, but it's not anymore. I mean, that is just the current form of resistance. The idea that we're post-racist because of President Obama, the idea that we're, you know, post-feminist, because, I mean, it's just absolutely, demonstrably untrue. And I think, you know, any collection of statistics about this status of diverse women, even, you know, what I was saying about the media, any group of statistics prove that it's wrong. So I don't know, maybe you could find somebody to censor them for inaccuracy. They're saying this in textbooks, they're saying that it's over.
Well, not so much that they're saying that it's over, it's just the way they always talk about it is in the past. They don't mention anything about the future. They talk about the 70s and then it's like it stopped or something. And they never mention any of the modern consisting problems that are just still to this day. They talk about the Equal Pay Act, but they don't talk about how we still only make 70 cents to every dollar that men earn.
Yeah, well, they're just hoping we'll stop, but we won't, right?
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to ask, we've got quite a line of people, so if people can,
I'm going to try to be brief.
as brief as possible, thank you.
My name is Carrie Bush. I'm the executive director of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. And I want to say thank you. It was a fabulous speech. And just almost as fabulous was standing online and meeting some of the young women today online to meet you, because I came with a friend who's slightly older than I am, but not much. And we wanted to know who was going to be in line today. So to see everybody in line, see these young women, our question is, how I guess we're trying to figure out, the League of Women Voters of New Jersey is trying to figure out how young women enter into political life, because about 40 years ago, the League was the entree into political life. So we will be coming to that meeting on Tuesday. Maybe not this Tuesday, but definitely Tuesday in March, I promise you. But also, I want to send out a call to action to any young woman to attend our spring forum on the 26th of April at Brookdale Community College. We will be teaching people how to lobby, but we'd like to learn from you how you enter into political life. Thank you. And I have one question for you. Personally, what do you watch on TV?
I have to say that I am hooked on narrative, so I'm there with my toothbrush, 3 consecutive sentences, and I'm saying, and then what happened? Mostly I'm hooked on news shows. But thank you for what you said, because this is a chance for, cross-generational activism. Was the League of Pissed Off Voters active here? Because I think part of it is just a name, the League of Women Voters, the League of Pissed Off Voters, but you're all doing the same thing. And I just want to support what you're saying about young women, because even if you look at the public opinion polls, young women are more likely than older women to support feminist issues and so on. And maybe the word is womanist or mujerista, which I love. I wish I spoke Spanish. Or girls with 3 R's, which I also love. But believe me, the young women are there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question.
Move this up a little bit because I'm a little bit taller. Gloria, it's been wonderful to be here with you and to meet you earlier. Everything you have said has resonated with me, and I'm so glad to be here in a room full of people, not just with women, but with men listening to feminist issues. That is a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful. So what I wanted to bring up was a point, I guess, that I've seen. I came into this university being really good at languages and not sure what I wanted to do, and then I did a number of majors, and I started to study Arabic my sophomore year. And when I did it, I kind of did it on a whim because I said I'm tired of Latin languages and all of that, and I want to move towards something new and different. And as I started to study it, I realized that I thought I was going into a completely foreign, different culture that I wanted to learn about and open my eyes and ears and everything to. But then I realized that it actually had a lot of similarities with the half Sicilian American piece of me, and I didn't realize this. And I think that it's interesting because in being in those classes, I've realized that a lot of the feminist issues that are there are in my own culture. And I find that these days, the feminist movement, at least in America, of what I've seen, is very separated. It seems like there's feminism for rich white women, and then there's feminism for everyone else. And it's kind of like that. And I really don't like that because I feel like there are so many people that fall into so many categories. And it should be more like biology, because I also study science, where you have groupings, and it's not just, different races and different, ethnicity, and they're all polarly separate, but, like identities, and we can keep discovering more, and they can keep branching, and we can find more discoveries of different kinds of feminisms and branch off, and they can be really wonderful, and we should try to foster those through culture. Not the color of our skin, but the color of our soul. And that's what I'd like to see. And so I was wondering, how do you think we can bring together the feminist movement, being able to come together, despite everything, that we may look like or our cultures? What can we do?
Just a little question like that, okay. No, but I think that sometimes what is identified in the media or in public life as feminism, because they think it's a white middle class movement, like it was just one phrase, or they render invisible the inventors of the women's movement. I mean, in the very first poll that Ms. Magazine ever printed, which was a Lou Harris poll from 1973, and that was the first ever poll of women's opinions on women's issues, first feminist poll. 30% of white women supported feminist issues, and 60% of African American women supported feminist issues. I mean, I think we need to question the image. That's one thing, because in my experience, the image is not true. Secondly, I think we need to understand the ways in which these sex and race and class and caste are intertwined So they can only be uprooted together. You can't continue a racist structure or a caste structure or a class structure unless you control reproduction. So you have to control the bodies of women to keep the so-called superior group pure and to get the so-called inferior group producing cheap labor. It isn't as if a caste or race system affects all women the same, but it imprisons all women in two different ways, one on a pedestal, one being exploited. So, you know, these things are just so intertwined. I don't think it's possible to disentangle them. And I just urge you to, for instance, you might go on the web and look up IGenPoo, AI-GEN P-O, who is a brilliant organizer of household workers, domestic workers nationwide. And, you know, is her organization, and many people, not just her, but she's the main person, that are in state legislatures trying to get equal pay, for instance. I mean, I think that is a feminist group.
Yes. And again, we have such a wonderful number of people in line, so if you could keep it short as much as possible. And I'm sorry we can't have back and forth with people who've already spoken because there are just too many people here. Right. Okay. Thanks.
Hi. My name is Vera. I'm in the IWL. We met earlier. It was a really pleasure to listen to your speech, and it gave me a lot to think about. My question is also one of these kind of big frame feminist questions that I know are hard to answer. But the thing is about the feminist movement, as I've experienced it now as either a third wave feminist, however you want to define it, I feel like it's growing further and further away from some of the values of the second wave feminist movement. Someone like Audre Lorde, who said you can't take down the master's house with the master's tools. Such a radical notion of the fact that the way we're raised and the way we understand how to think and how to feel come out of a lot of masculine structures, and the way society functions is sometimes not accessible for women and women's bodies and women in general. And I wonder if you think that is there still space for those sort of notions of like restructuring society, or should we just continue to try to gain power in the structures that already exist?
You know, the wonderful thing about the women's movement is there are so many of us, there is no way we can integrate the structures as they exist. We have to transform them. We don't have a choice. There are too many of us, you know. I mean, let's face it, you know, we are, right? So yeah, the transforming is absolutely still the goal, and whether you do it from within or without depends on where you are and what your skills are. But the main thing is that we stay in touch with each other. Whether we're, you know, if you're outside, your job is to make the woman inside look reasonable so she can make progress inside. But so I don't think we should judge each other about how we're active, but I think we should inspire each other to have the transformational goal for all of us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Steinem, Ms. Bunch. It's a pleasure. My name is Alan. I run a feminist t-shirt shop online. It's called feministapparel.com. Check it out. And I was just wondering your take on, can feminism have a seat at the capitalistic consumer corporate table? Can there be a day when it's kind of how they try to get an energy stamp to say they're efficient enough, that there can be something like that for feminism, saying that they are treating their women workers, LGBTQ workers equally?
Mm. Yes, of course, and there are women inside many, many corporations doing exactly that, which is why I was saying we shouldn't judge each other necessarily on our kind of activism. But I do think, I must say, I do think that to be really strong, a movement has to have a certain number of people who can't be fired. You know? So, you know, it isn't that they're the only people, it's just that, like, once again, they can make the women inside look reasonable. And there have been some very radical, subversive partnerships like that, of inside, outside, very satisfying.
Thank you.
In fact, I think almost everything that's happened in the last 40 years has ultimately been, in one way or another, a partnership of inside and outside strategy. So it's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm part of the UN Feminist Advocacy class here at Douglas. And, so we're going to the UN for the Commission on the Status of Women this year. It's being held on March 10th through 18th. It's also going to be televised. Shout out to that. I just wonder, we've been hearing a lot of, we've heard both sides. We've heard how it's a great opportunity, and also we've heard some of the people inside that have also a skeptical perspective about how the UN goes about, how most of the NGOs with the most money get the most of the clout or weight in the conversations. And I just want to know, what is a good way to look at that and still be inspired to go and advocate for such things?
I don't know, Charlotte, do you want to answer? Charlotte is,
well,
she knows more about, okay.
Having been on the inside-outside strategy vis-a-vis the UN for a long time, I really want to pick up on what Gloria said before, which is that the UN is like any other institution. Think about it like your city council, your state government, your national government. It's any institution that's made up of people who are in power and people who work in civil service jobs, and it's just global. It's not, people, we invest a lot in our desires for the UN, and that's what makes it important. But it's going to have all the same power dynamics, all the same questions of making political strategy to move things, and times when you feel like it's moving, and times when you feel like you have to disrupt. And times when you can work well inside, and times when you have to do something different. So I think if you think about the UN not as any different than working locally with a local government, but with a worldwide system where you learn all the different dimensions of that, if you want to change the world, you want to change all of those institutions. And the UN is one of them. But you don't wait for it to change. You see, who can you work with inside? Who do you have to pressure? And among that is your own government, because the UN is ultimately made up of all the governments in the world, including the United States government. So one of the most effective ways to change the UN is to affect your own government. So think of it more as a part of a larger picture rather than just that one meeting of the commission. That commission is a place where women get to put our ideas into the UN. So of course, one group has more power than another. That's the world we live in. But you maneuver with that for the goals you have, just like you would anywhere else.
Thank you.
Right. And at a minimum, the UN serves an excuse for all your friends to come to New York.
and to meet women from around
and
the world.
organize both in and out, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And to meet, I think that is right. The other thing is you get a chance to meet those feminists from around the world, those women who also want to bring change. And that's an amazing thing you were talking earlier about going places where wherever you go, you can find the women who also care. That's part of what going to the UN and to the commission meeting is about, and learning about the amazing women in other parts of the world who are also engaged in this work.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deanna. I'm so nervous right now. This is such a treat. But as a Douglas student, I had the opportunity, Douglas. I had the opportunity to be a mentor for underclassmen who are coming into Douglas and who are very new to this. And one of the things that I think saddened me, and this is something that I see also that celebrities are doing in the media all the time, is how people are afraid of calling themselves feminists. And I'm proud to say that I'm a feminist. I want all my friends to be feminist. I want my boyfriends to be feminist, my dogs to be feminist. So what solutions do you have to offer for young women who are afraid to call themselves the F word, as we like to call it in our class?
Well, number one, send them to the dictionary.
Because once they see that it just means a belief in the full social, economic, political equality of males and females, they say, you know.
I tried to tell them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's partly because Rush Limbaugh has been saying feminazi every minute for years, you know, so it's distorted. And once again, I would just remind us there are other words. We don't have to all use the same word. Womanist is a great word, and women's liberationist is a great word. But it may be that they feel that they will be disapproved of, or they won't have a date for Saturday night, or they, you know, if they call themselves feminists. And, you know, if it doesn't work, go on to other people. I mean, I say this because I find myself, I don't know if this happens to you, but I find myself that my form of control is to say, you don't agree with me? Let me explain it to you again, you know? Maybe, you know, don't, if it doesn't work in a few times, go to somebody else. You know, maybe they're not ready.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Mouret. I'm 16 years old, and I started self-identifying as a feminist when I was in like 7th grade or something. And so much of that was due to the internet and how much information was available to me and how I could connect with other people and understand that my experiences were not alone and that there's this great community available to me. And I know you mentioned how the internet is kind of a cesspit of sexism in a lot of ways, but I've also experienced it as a very feminist community. And I was wondering how you feel about how that has changed the feminist movement, as well as a trend I've noticed recently in mainstream feminism that runs towards de-radicalization, if that's a word, I feel like, where ideas like
being too theoretical.
Sorry, ideas like you know, traditional femininity and you know, idea like sexuality, things like porn should be accepted without any kind of critical lens, without any kind of critical thinking. And I feel like this makes feminism more palatable to people in power, to men, without really analyzing it, even though it's quite mainstream. So how do you think the feminist movement has changed since the second wave to now?
You know, there are great feminist sites, and I mean, you know, I in pointing out the difficulties of media, I didn't mean to say that it is not terribly powerful, you know, that we can get in touch with each other as you are doing. I think that's, you know, absolutely great, and you know, we can locate each other, we can inform each other, we can discover that we're not alone. So no, I agree with you, and I'm sorry if I gave the impression that the internet was hopeless in some way. No.
We only have about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to try to get 2 or 3 more people. Maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions and then let you respond to them, just to give a chance for 2 or 3 of you to speak, and then we'll give Gloria a final response. Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say being here and listening to you and everyone else with their questions and answers, I feel like I just watched the best episode of Girl Code ever. But my question actually concerns some research that I'm doing for my senior project. My thesis concerns social media and feminist organizing, so it's kind of similar to the previous person who's asking a question. So what I really wanted to know is, since feminist organizing is really prevalent through Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and it's kind of our generation's way of voicing our concerns and organizing and things like that. What is your commentary or observation on how it is that you successfully organized when you were, you know, leading the feminist charge?
Well, we had words like mimeograph. Anybody remember this? And you know, but actually I have to say that if the phone had been invented after the web, we would be saying, you can hear each other's voices, you know, this is so fantastic. But you know, the point is, you just use, you know, whatever means there are, and obviously to be able to communicate with each other, identify each other, get a feeling of support. My main concern is what is happening. All the support, all the information, all the finding each other on the web is great. Fan-fucking-tastic. It's great. But what action is coming out of that? Because I find myself sometimes feeling that because I've transferred something to 6 other people and pressed send, I've done something. No, I haven't. So it's just a question of what it actually changes, what it leads to. But it's crucial, I agree.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I am a loud and proud feminist. And I feel the pain of my fellow feminists who are very frustrated by people who seem to very obviously be of a feminist mindset but resist the title. But I was also wondering, on the other side of the coin, what you think about this. I see it like a feminist policing on who can and cannot call themselves a feminist based on their belief, and how we have this ever-expanding definition almost, and recently are seeing judgment on those who wish to take that title for themselves, and then the community saying, no, you're not allowed to.
No, I think we have the power to name ourselves, and that goes for just about everything. You know, that we may have a different set of standards, but we have to respect each person and their ability to name themselves.
I agree.
Next question.
Thank you. It's an honor being with you here with you, Ms. Steinem, and I take pride in calling you that since you are the original Ms. And I love, by the way, I loved Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions, and especially the article you wrote with Robin Morgan on female genital mutilation in Africa, and Hillary Clinton, who I know you endorsed and campaigned with, called women's rights globally the great unfinished work of the 21st century, and there are so many challenges facing the world, especially in the Islamic world and in Africa today, as you very well know. And there are a lot of political and economic reasons that we have a difficult path ahead of us there and all over the world. I think as Maureen Dowd put it in the New York Times, she said, who cares if Saudi Arabian women can't drive as long as American women keep driving their SUVs? But there's also pushback from the women in those countries. I think Newsweek did they're the very brave women in Saudi Arabia committing the acts of civil disobedience and driving. Yes, but there are also women there were some women in Saudi Arabia who said, oh, these Western women, all they do is drive around running errands and voting all day, and I just can't imagine that life for my daughters. It's terrifying. What do you think the best course is in those particular parts of the world in achieving equality?
Well, it's to support the women in their struggles there. I mean, they're there, they know what's going on, they have the knowledge that we don't. Support the struggles for equality, the women who want to drive. I'm not going to support the woman who says she doesn't want to drive. That's up to me, but I'm going to support the woman who says she does want to drive, right? I think I just think we need to listen to the people who are there. We need to not make the mistake of some of our foundations, I have to say, that fund from above and don't listen to. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be our last question because unfortunately we have to.
We can go on. I don't care.
Well, I know you would go on, but I'm. Okay. Yeah, I know. This is really wonderful. I just want to say you can join the Twitter, IWL Steinem. You can go to the Tuesday night meetings. You can contact the IWL and make sure you get that calendar of all the discussions and events having to do with women that all the different units of the IWL do during the semester, which is going to keep you busy having these conversations further. We do have to let Gloria get some rest eventually. But also, I just want to say we were discussing beforehand that this is actually the best answer to all those articles that say feminism isn't of interest to young people is the 800 people who showed up tonight. And I do want to shout out to the people who are in the overflow room, because we have this room as full as we could get in another whole room full in the overflow room. So I think we were discussing that Time magazine said the women's movement is dead something like 27 times between 1971 and 2000. So it's not really a new line, and it's continued to go. So you're going to get the last question, and Gloria's going to get the last word.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for making this a public event, open to the community as a whole. I'm not a Rutgers student. My sister's, and she brought me here tonight. So thank you to the organizers and Gloria Steinem as well. So my question concerns, you made a comment about like $1 billion tech person in wherever donating money to kids in Africa to like help them pay for their school funds. I just finished a 4-month backpacking trip in Africa, and I have to say that there still is technology present on the continent, and a lot of it's a homegrown initiative. And you've also talked about like the perils of hierarchy, patriarchy, patronizing attitude in our society versus women today and other people who felt marginalized by society. Wouldn't you say that having yet again another Western influence, probably white male, donating money to Africa to yet again, oh, Africa, we have your solution to all your problems, it's to invest in technology, and here you go, here's money. Would you not say that that is also a little bit patronizing and reinforces the hierarchy that's been established between the developed nations versus the less developed nations of the world?
Well, but kids need school funds. I mean, women are now prostituting themselves in order to pay their kids' school funds, and the school fees are not that much. So it would be if we were saying to be educated in some way that only we dictated, but we are responding to a request for school fees. And there's also a request for bathrooms in schools, because the girls find it very difficult, to maintain privacy and to go to schools and so on if there are no bathrooms. So I think there are specific requests to respond to. But I hear what you're saying, but maybe I just didn't express what I meant by school fees. But it is a request, and actually there are several websites that are trying to do this, when in fact it seems to me that Bill Gates could do that instead of mosquito nets, which was exactly what you say.
Yeah, the mosquito net problem, you give them...
Right, was from
above,
above, yes, yeah. Right. No, I think responding to requests is different. All right, I'm feeling bad that you're, okay, all right, here's what because you're still, we didn't finish here, I'm gonna give you 2 assignments, everybody, okay. One is that before you leave, as you're walking out, introduce yourselves to maybe 2 or 3 people you don't know. Say what you care about, what you're doing. If you came here, we probably share interests and values. And, you might leave with a new revolutionary colleague, a new job, a new love affair, anything could happen. And also, I will revert to an old deal I used to make with audiences, which you can see in the title of one of my books, which is that if you promise me, each of you, that you will do one outrageous thing in the cause of social justice in the 24 hours that begin at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, okay? I don't care what it is, only you know what it is. It can be saying pick it up yourself. It can be deciding to run for office. It can be, only you know. But it can be saying, where is everybody? How come everybody where I am is white, and I'm going snowblind here? What? It's entirely up to you what it is. But if you do this one outrageous thing in the cause of simple justice, I swear to you that I will do one outrageous thing too. And what that means is two things. One, by the weekend, the world will be better. And the other is you will have such a good time that you will never again fail to say, what can I do that's outrageous today? Thank you.
Don't you think she should come back? Let me just first thank Charlotte Bunch, our own distinguished woman leader. Let me thank again the Angelides for their endowment, making it possible to bring people like Gloria here. President Bob Barchi and Dr. Francis Barchi for their support of the work of the IWL. There were many people who made this evening possible, from the campus dean at Livingston, to the staff of the IWL, to the AV and the tech people. I can't mention all the names. Please join me in thanking them. Let me end with the best feminist quote I know. It's not Gloria Steinem, but she would have said it, I'm sure. A French feminist once wrote, "The future is not what it was." Thank you all very much.